My goodness.
Talk no more, none of that shit. I'm gonna let you say
Let's go, eight.
Got me started, wrist frames carded, pull up double parking, don't even pay like I'm the owner, my young niggas retarded.
Yo, what up, guys? We're on the clock. It's Caleb here again. Julian's still out for at least a couple more pods, but I'm joined today by, you may recognize him from Twitter as KJ Pistons, but KJ, thanks for making an appearance on the pod, man.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we've definitely exchanged a little bit, talking just general hoops and talking about the college game. I know it's something that you enjoy talking about, so I figured that we would I'd bring you some players I think were some interesting conversations, kind of like an interesting grouping, as we're seeing that college basketball is just becoming more and more of a place where international talent is coming in and showcasing what they got, and it could be with the NIL stuff, be a viable option for guys to kind of get their name out there on the American circuit a little bit more effectively. What are I guess we could just start right away with the UCLA guys. We got three of them here: Adai Mara, Jan Vide, and Burke. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. I just call him Burke. But what are your thoughts about this UCLA class so far in terms of their previous experiences and what kind of you think their fit will be? Specifically, like starting with maybe Mara, as he's kind of the big name.
Mara, he's definitely a guy that's very intriguing. I mean, that's 7'2", 7'3". There's not a lot of guys that height with his passing feel and just overall skill, like touch and stuff. But with him, it's gonna be the question is how's he fit with Adembona,
Mm-hmm.
because those are both two bigs that can't really shoot, and UCLA are a team that they don't really have a lot of shooters, so it'll be interesting to see how they incorporate that. And Mara's defense is it's pretty questionable. I mean, when you watch him play, you can definitely see that there's a lot of potential there. He uses his length well, but he's also pretty slow. He can't really guard a pick and roll that well. And you can tell like there's a lot of work. So I think Bona can definitely really like in the EuroLeague, Mara, not EuroLeague, in FIBA, Mara was on his own most of the time. But with Bona there, it definitely creates because Bona's a really good defender, very
Mm-hmm.
versatile. He can definitely make Mara
Look a
look
lot
much
better.
better.
Yeah.
But on offense, it'll definitely be an interesting fit to see how they do that because they're both too big that's really mostly in the paint, and none of them are really that good of a post scorer. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that works.
Yeah, I definitely, when I first saw him go to UCLA, I thought, program wise, it'll be a great place for him to kind of flourish, be in a situation to succeed and be around good players. But like you said, the first thing that like kind of came to mind was what is his role going to look like as a freshman? Because obviously he's somebody that a lot of people are projecting to be a one and done type of guy just because of his upside. As you kind of spoke to on the defensive end, there's still a lot to be desired. But offensively, you hinted at it right at the beginning, was his playmaking is phenomenal, and I'm hoping that they're able to work something out, kind of doing a little bit of the high-low stuff that we saw kind of with Gonzaga, with Holmgren and Timmy. Even though Holmgren's obviously was a much better shooter, I think if Mara can, stretch the defense to 15 feet, and kind of like we've seen in the NBA, Jokic is a phenomenal shooter and an all-around player, but his passing and his screen setting are something that create a lot of gravity and create a lot of spacing on their own. So I'll be curious to see what type of sets and lineups they get Bona and Mara into. But I think that we had to lead with him because he's definitely the most like intriguing. Yeah, wouldn't you agree? Out of all these guys, that I mean, I think I would make an argument for a Visage, but I think that out of all these guys, in terms of if everything kind of comes together correctly, you can't teach 7'3". He's got long arms. And I think he's got decent shot blocking instincts. He just doesn't have as quick of feet as guys that we've seen at this size over the last couple of years, like Holmgren and Wembanyama, where they're able to be more mobile on the defensive end. I think he's going to have to be somebody that relies a lot on his size for shot blocking.
Yeah, I think in terms of even not just international for college, just in the draft in general, he's one of the more intriguing players with his
Hmm.
passing. But I think one thing that people don't really like bring up when it comes to just passing in general, his scoring isn't quite there. And what makes Jokic really special is he's got the scoring and the playmaking, which makes him
Hmm.
really special. But then you got guys who are like Trevor Williams, for example, from Purdue, really talented passer, but couldn't really stick in the league because he didn't have much of a scoring. So I think with Mares, he needs to add some kind of scoring, even if it's just from the mid range, just more of a
I just would
low
love to
post
see him
threat.
at 18 feet,
Yeah,
be able to take those shots confidently.
yeah, exactly. And I think his passing is valuable for sure, but without scoring, I don't know how good his playmaking can be. Just because he's like pretty easy to guard. He's gonna like most of the time pass the ball up. So you
Yeah,
know
I
what I
mean,
mean.
even in
So
the Euro League, we saw that kind of his predictability as a player. He had a 0.714 assist to turnover ratio, and what it shows in a lot of the tape is people are just playing down on him, and they're just watching the cutters, and they're able to jump some of those passes. Even though he's able to make some miraculous plays that show up really good on highlight reels, it's just going to still have to be something to see. And I think some guys at UCLA were able to add and hopefully add some spacing. We'll kind of talk about if you want to pivot the conversation to Jan Vide. He's somebody that I think if he's able to shoot the ball effectively, could be a really dangerous weapon for UCLA in the backcourt. I was lucky enough. I'm sure we'll have Stephen Bagnall on the pod at some point, but I was able to join a little campus to NBA Dynasty League where we're doing a NCAA and NBA draft for fantasy wise, and I was able to get Jan Vide and another guy that we'll talk about on this list. I took for the first overall pick in the college draft, and I'll be curious to see what you think of that, and maybe not taking Justin Edwards or somebody of that caliber like Okoye, but with Vide, I think the stuff that I love with him is just his all-around game. Especially on the offensive end. I think that's where definitely his strengths are right now. Really underrated playmaker, in my opinion. I think he's going to be able to project to be a solid combo guard. And I think if you run him at the one, him in the pick and roll is him and Mara is something that, and Bona is something that I'm really going to like to see. I think he'll be able to create a lot of easy looks for those guys. A pinpoint passer has really flourished in that area on Slovenia's national team, as we saw in the U19s. They were only able to get ninth place, but he showed a good balance of scoring and playmaking. I'm curious what you think of Vide.
Yeah, V-Day, he's definitely gonna come into UCLA with I mean, just come in for sure. Because when you look at the team, there's not a lot of guys that can just create their own style. Because you got Dylan Andrews, Sebastian Mack, who are kind of close to that, but they're not quite there as V-Day in terms of a score.
And
So
his
I
size is
think,
exceptional. I mean, he's six
yeah,
six, maybe
six
six
six.
seven.
I think he's definitely gonna become a good scoring threat for them. Maybe even the leading scorer. We'll see. But with Vite, I think the question is the playmaking because he's got the scoring down, but when you watch him play, he does a lot of pick and rolls and he doesn't do much passes, which is something you don't really want to see from a point guard. He's only 18, I think, maybe
He's,
19.
he's
So there's
younger.
definitely a lot younger. All right. So there's definitely a lot of time for him to improve that. And if he does, he'll go a long way. But even just draft wise, when you compare him to someone like Nikola Topic, because
Mm-hmm.
Topic is like very, very similar, but Topic
And Duracell.
makes yeah, they make those passes that VD doesn't really make.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with VD we could be looking at like maybe like a 13, 14 point per game score, but only around 2 assists a game. So when it comes to draft time, it's gonna be like um, do you maybe like a second rounder? Maybe a guy who stays in the draft, maybe even leaves. I don't know, but we'll see. But the scoring's definitely there. I just want the playmaking to really elevate his game.
His in between game's phenomenal, and which is where I think he'll thrive at the college level. Not a knockdown shooter yet from three, and I think that'll come along. His jumper looks good. I think his mechanics are right, and that'll come with time and reps. but I think some of the playmaking might be unlocked here a little bit at UCLA. I think, especially in the FIBA stuff, it's just very clear that he's kind of, just doing his own thing, playing at a really high pace, geared to score. Where I think at UCLA, they'll really push him to be able to show. I think he has some really good natural passing instincts. And I think he makes some reads that are phenomenal, is able to get the ball where it needs to be. But I think you summed it up perfectly. It's just he's not making those passes consistently and not willing to make them as often as some of the other guys you mentioned. Even Duricic, who's definitely geared to score and definitely going to project to be more of a 2 or a 3 than a 1. He still makes some phenomenal passes and maybe even on the level of V-Day in terms of willingness. A guy that I haven't watched a ton of, but lately I've been kind of digging into his film and I've been really impressed, is Berkey, coming out of Turkey. I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name. I don't want to butcher it too bad. I don't know, maybe you could give it a better shot than I could, but he's definitely going to be somebody that they're going to be looking to produce early as a shooter. Was able to shoot around 35% in the Euro League in like 33 games. Not really a great defender, but I think at 6'9" has the ability to eventually grow into his frame, kind of put on some weight and play like the conventional 4 in the NBA, possibly.
I think Berkey comes in as I don't know if he's gonna start right away because of course Mara and Bona and they're probably gonna put Lazar at the 3 to
Mhm.
maybe put more shooting, more
Stefanovic
spacing,
is
and
great. We could have totally put him on this pod too.
yeah, he's got experience. For Berkey, I think he's got a lot of versatility. He can definitely defend, in my opinion, in the future, this 2 to 4 in the future, and the shooting potential is there for sure. So I think he's probably going to start a little slow, but as we come toward the end of the season, he's going to be a guy that, like, when March Madness comes around, they're going to be like, "Who's this guy?" And
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a riser in the draft. But I think he's probably someone that stays another year and maybe possibly. I think the defense is good right now, but maybe like get the defense to a whole nother level, and so he can become a good shooter, more consistent. Because you said he saw us 35%, but he's never really been a consistent shooter for his career. So I'll be interested to see where he is this year.
Mhm.
But uh, I think he just shows a lot of potential this year. Probably will stay another year, and I wouldn't be surprised if his first round pick next year.
Yeah, I agree. What I meant more with the defensive stuff is I think some of the stuff consistency wise, he shows a lot of ability to get out on the perimeter, but the rim protection leaves a lot to be desired, especially if he's going to be playing like the 4 in the NBA. Because I just don't know if he necessarily has the quickness to keep up with NBA 2 guards, and I don't know if he necessarily has the strength to keep up with some of these guys like LeBron maybe not going forward, but a Tatum and a Giannis is just going to kind of be able to bully him. Um, uh, and I think that he might be a liability on that front. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what his role shakes out to be. I think, like you said, I think he'll be definitely a guy that, and come tournament time, a lot of people are going to be surprised by, and kind of seemingly come out of nowhere, almost like an Alex Caravan type of guy. Where it's just going to be like, wow, if he can develops into a consistent shooter and can knock down some shots and play his role on offense and defense, he could be a nice little piece next year for them. If they lose like Amara and a V-Day to the draft, or if V-Day stays, I think that they'd be a nice duo going forward. And they also, I mean, they brought in a plethora of guys. We also could have thrown on the Ilane on here. I'm sure that he's going to be phenomenal. I haven't really dug much into his film. He's somebody that I'm probably going to watch here over the next couple of weeks. But I don't know. Do you have any closing notes on any of these guys? Who's maybe your favorite as a draft prospect? Kind of how we're framing this pod.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of talent what UCLA brought in, but I think definitely gonna have to watch for the fit because UCLA in general just brought a lot of talent. But I'm kind of worried about the fit. But I think most of these guys are guys that all have first round potential for sure. Now, just kind of the question is how soon they can develop the game fully to sell teams. or can they maybe like stay another year? Because next year's class is still relatively weak outside of like Cooper Flag and some other guys. So it'll definitely be interesting to see. And I think outside of Mira, I think Vide and Berkey probably stay another year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they could play their way to a first round pick this year.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if all three of them are able to play themselves into a draft spot. But with Vide and Berkey, I think that both of them would benefit from another year of school if their stock isn't in the first round, kind of like what you're hinting at. Um, Talking about the two Diaz Grahams, specifically Guillermo has been kind of taking a little bit of storm here over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people are really, really impressed with them. Um, what are kind of your thoughts on these two really, really versatile forwards from Spain that Pittsburgh has going next year?
Yeah, these twins are two players that people aren't really tapped into yet, quite yet. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you come look at guys who are 7 foot that can move as well as them, even hand the ball just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
not like fully yet, but and the defensive potential is there for sure. And Pittsburgh are a team who I think can make a lot of buzz this year. You know, they bring
Mm-hmm.
Blake Hinson back is like awesome. So I think they're one of the more underrated teams this year. So if they're winning games, people are definitely gonna notice those twins for sure. And I think those are guys that could honestly have the potential to just maybe go first round, maybe even higher.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I agree.
they didn't play that much this year, but this season coming in, I think with their potential and just they're both consistent shooters. The defense, like I said, isn't quite there, but if they can show they can play defense and just fill the role, I think teams are definitely going to be big fans of them, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that a very common thing that even I caught myself doing when I was watching them both last year is kind of lumping their games together as the same player. But I think you get very, very like unique aspects with both of them that are kind of fun. And you can tell, similar to the Thompson twins, that they've been playing off each other a lot of their life, where, Jorge is more a shooter and playmaker, and Guillermo kind of tends to be, more of a rangy defender. Advanced stats wise, that Guillermo is much better in defensive win shares and offense and win shares in general, where Jorge was more efficient playmaking wise and was a much better shooter from three, but struggled a little bit more from the field. So I think you summed up really well. They both have like a little bit of everything. It's kind of what you're looking for in a long-term, 7-footer prospect. And it's just going to be a matter of with an increased amount. And it's honestly a consistent thing that we'll all see is, draft analysts like yourself and me and, Julian when he gets back on. A thing that we're going to consistently ask ourselves going forward with these, really, really unique prospects that get leaps in playing time, going from their freshman to sophomore to junior year, is can they maintain the level of consistency? And I think for both these guys, can they maintain their level of efficiency with the ball in their hands and then make improvements on the defensive end? I think something that makes them both very unique and makes them exciting to me is that they're not turning the ball over. I think that that's the biggest thing that you want out of, two guys that you want to be able to put the ball in their hand occasionally. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think other than Mara, that these are, and we'll talk about Avicic, but I think these are the two guys that out of the list of players, Mitchell and Leons will get to, and I think they're both very, very solid college basketball players and potential pro prospects for this year. The Diaz Grahams are kind of a boomer bust type of thing, but I'm excited to find out. I think that they'll, obviously they both played around like 10 minutes a game last year, so seeing that get more towards 25 ish, to 30, it'll be interesting to see how the efficiency translates. Can they maintain the level of decision making that they've been able to play with, which is not something uncommon that we see from Spanish players. I think that overall, we were talking about with Mara that they're very oriented towards a team style of basketball, from the youth level. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to watching them both play, and I'm sure you are as well. With a little bit bigger role. I kept hinting at him. He was my first overall pick in our NCAA fantasy draft because if there's a guy that I want to bet on maybe going forward over the next 5 years that's in college basketball right now, there's nobody that quite gets me excited like Zvonimir Visic, if I'm being honest. Last year we saw, he kind of crept his way into some draft conversations, but, decided to, at first it seemed like he was going to stay overseas. And then all of a sudden, you know, it's almost like the floodgates open. Everybody was just jumping across, and, we're going to go play at UCLA. And when he made the decision to go to Kentucky, I was like, damn, this Kentucky team could be really good. And if he can come in and play a solid role on both ends, like I think he can, he could be a guy that creeps into a top 10 pick conversation. And I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are off that before we talk more about the specifics about his game that get me excited. But I don't know, what are your kind of first reactions to me being so high on him?
Aaron Bradshaw is going to be out for a while, so I wouldn't be
Even when he
surprised if.
comes back, I think a Visage can play the four fine.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he got the starting job. I mean, they don't really have much centers. Jordan Burks is another underrated player there in the team, but he's more of a 4 and a 5, and that's the only real center they really got at the moment. And they got someone else too, but I can't remember his name at the moment. But they don't have much depth in the center outside of Bradshaw. So Savannah Murph definitely gonna come in and play a big role. I know Calipari is a big fan of his game. I saw a couple interviews about him. And at 7'1", 7'2", you don't really see a lot of guys that can like shoot the three.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't really get a lot of chances to do it in Europe, but like his ball handling a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
even just the movement. Like he really didn't get, mostly was a spot up stretch four in Europe. So I'm definitely interested to see what role Kentucky play. And they got a young team, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got a big draft boost. But yeah, we'll see about where his stock is
Yeah.
in the
I
season.
mean, a guy
For
that
your
I'm,
t- oh
no, go ahead.
oh yeah, for your top 10, I mean, looking at the draft, like outside the top like six, it's kind of like
Wide open.
this. It's wide open. It's wide open for sure. Like this names that like no one can really decide on who the consensus is right now. So I don't know about top 10, but I wouldn't be surprised if Zavon is like a guy that NBA teams like so much that they could be like putting him maybe like top 25 around
Yeah.
there. We'll see how that goes though. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing that I like about him so much is the versatility to play both big spots. I think he's going to be able to do that. They got Ugana Onyesu, who I think was the name that you were trying to stir up there for a second, who much like a guy like a Thiero, looks like he put on a ton of muscle, cut a bunch of weight, dropped his body fat percentage, looks like he's in great shape. And regardless if it's Bradshaw and Yesu or a Visage, their big spot, I think, is going to be very versatile. They're going to be able to do a lot of different combinations of lineups, especially with the fact that I think Abisic and Burks will both be able to play the four effectively and play the five. The things that you hinted at, it's the on ball stuff where I start to get excited with a 7 foot plus guy. I don't know how familiar you are with some of my work. I just freak out over guys who are 6'9" plus who can handle the ball. And like a lot of people tend to get a little overexcited at times, but for me, what I'm sold on is actually the defensive consistency, and the rebounding, as like floor setters for him as a player. And then when you add in the fact that, he's able to shoot the three ball, with somewhat inconsistency. I mean, last year in the EuroLeague, he had through 33 games, averaged 7.5, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, but only shot 26% from three. But the stuff that I do like to see is that he was played very free with his game at times, and when he was able to kind of get that freedom on offense, is a guy who potentially could develop into a shot creator on ball at that size, for moments, and showed some flashes of some step back shooting and stuff that I really like. In the mid range, has a good turnaround jumper. And I think if he keeps adding to his game and playing along such talented players at Kentucky, he's really going to have an opportunity to flourish on the defensive end, especially. And for moments on offense, I think we're going to see, with how much energy he's going to save playing against high octane guards like Wagner and Dillingham, And and with the spacing of a guy like Shepard and some of these other talented players on their roster, um, we're really, really gonna see what his upside is as a player um pretty early, I think. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think we're gonna see within probably the first 10 games whether this kid is a legit NBA prospect or not.
I mean, I'm not as high as him as you are. I mean, he
I
did
don't think a lot
show
of
a
people
lot of
are.
yeah. I mean, he saw a lot of flashes in the U20, of course, and
Mhm.
of course that mixtape blew up, and he got a lot of hype. But last year he didn't. He declared for the draft, but he didn't get much attention. I mean, he did have a small role, to be fair, but even just watching the U20 film, the defense isn't quite there. And for a 7'2" big man, you kind of want that to be a little better, especially with his versatility. And I think the shooting is 100% there, but outside the shooting, I don't know. Like he doesn't have much like real like center skills that much. He's more of
Mhm.
just like a spot up shooter right now at the moment, and the playmaking still needs some work. I mean, I think he's got potential, but I mean, I think you teams would probably want him to be like a rim protector who can also kind of shoot a little bit, and the defense isn't quite there. Also, like can create a little bit. Like I know like Grant Nelson got a lot of hype in the draft process, and like even just comparing him and Zavonimar, even though Grant's a little older, I probably would like lean toward Grant a little more because he's got a little bit of similar handle, but
Mhm.
he's also a better defender in the rim but the shot is questionable, but we'll see how that goes. But like I think like if you're like comparing both of them and they're both like in the second round tier to me. So but I hopefully Javon can definitely like over exceed what I think he can do because I think he's got the potential to do it for sure. And he'll get the opportunity. But right now I think I think he's probably like a second round guy. But we'll
I
see how
hear
that
that.
goes.
I understand it. Sometimes you just gotta swing on what you see, and that's definitely the spot I'm in, with some of the flashes from Zavonimir. I mean, especially like I'll have to just I'll slightly disagree on some of the rim protection stuff. I think that he'll be fine. I just don't think he has the mobility on that end quite yet. And the strength to kind of, stop a guy who's just gonna mash on him and back him down. But I think he'll be a decent weak side rim protector if you're asking him to play alongside another big like a Bradshaw or an Yesu. Which is I think where he could thrive at the NBA level is maybe as a stretch four with plus size. But we'll just have to see with that one. I think it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts. Another guy who I think projects as kind of a stretch for him. Really curious to see what you think of. Is Paulius Maraskis, who is another one of these guys that it seemed like he was going to play overseas and then kind of threw his hat in the ring to end up at Arizona, which I think is an interesting fit. I don't think he'll get a ton of playing time, but as a guy that I've just been itching to talk about with somebody on a podcast. Um, just the offensive efficiency for him just kind of boggles the mind a little bit. In 60 games last year, 15 minutes a game, averaged 2.21 offensive win shares a game, and kind of blew a lot of these guys out of the water with his efficiency. Shooting the ball 82% from the free throw line, 35% from three, and had an offensive rating of 118, 119 ish and shot about like 60% effective field goal percentage, 1.44 points per shot, 63% true shooting percentage. He comes in and projects as a guy who could have like a solid role on a team as a spot up shooter and somebody who can take mismatches down to the paint. I think has a little bit of a post bag, can turn around, hit the turnaround jumper. Um, and as a point of attack defender, I think he's heavily underrated just because, he's kind of viewed as like a slow-footed, European white guy. I think he gets down and gets in his stance pretty well, is able to stop drives pretty effectively. And I'll be curious to see what you think of his prospects as probably a guy who's more of a next year guy.
Yeah, I mean Arizona, they're gonna he's probably not gonna play that much because Arizona's got a team that's kind of full of a lot of veteran vets and stuff. Ballo's there. They got Caleb Love running the show in the offense. and they brought in a similar, but like, they brought in another EuroLeague guy last year, and Henry Visar, who didn't touch the floor that much. I think he only played like 6, 7 minutes a game. So I think when it comes to Arizona and the international guys, they're definitely gonna take the time with them. So I mean, down the line, I think just we'll see more of him in the future. But I think for this season, he's probably not gonna touch the floor much, but he'll get some more buzz in year two, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely somebody I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on where you're at with him. I don't think, like you said, I don't think he'll get much tick with some of the other guys that they have in their front court. And there's another guy that we were gonna talk about with Krivas, but just defer to talk about some guys who are more concrete draft prospects. Um, Closing notes on kind of this crop of younger guys. I'm just still really excited about all the versatility that all these players that we've just talked about kind of present as long-term NBA prospects, regardless if it's getting drafted this year, next year, the year after. I think all of them have the potential to turn themselves into really good. I call the term high value role player, like a Kyle Anderson-esque player, like a Bruce Brown. Being able to come in, fill a role, not turn the ball over, shoot efficiently from three, guard their guy, be able to be a point of attack defender for some of them and protect the rim for others. I the flood of all these 6'6" to 6'9", and then 7 foot ish plus guys that can pass, dribble, shoot is really enticing. And I'll be curious to see if this is a consistent theme that we'll see going forward. And I'm curious what you think of that. Is this just going to be what we're going to be seeing? A lot of these guys are going to try to play more on the perimeter.
I mean, every single day, my brother, Pistons Draft Talk, I know you probably seen him on Twitter and Instagram.
Mhm.
Like every single week, he posts like a new guy that comes in like 6'11" and can dribble the ball and just like have that versatility. Like he just posted someone like the other day, not from Columbia, freshman Arab,
Mhm. Yep, he's
very
great.
versatile, 6'11". Yeah. And I mean, like we saw with Grant Nelson. Like, I mean, I actually like I posted that and it blew up, went on ESPN and all that. So it's pretty crazy. But like people love those good type of guys, and as even like Alex Sarr, I mean his versatility is there, and like
Julian's a
there's a
big
ton of
Alex
guys.
Song guy.
Yeah,
Julian
I
loves.
mean Wemby, of course, and like Chet and all that. Even the DS twins can come in there. Like I think like every single draft we're gonna see at least like 2, 3 guys that can like minimum probably that can like have some versatility, can handle the ball a little bit. Even in this year's class, we can count like Ivises, you can say Grant's in that tier, maybe Arab eventually. I don't know how big of a role he can get. And there's definitely some other guys in there. So and of course Sarkin has some versatility there. So that's like 4 or 5
Buzelis, I
guys.
mean, Buzelis is
Yeah,
another
exactly. There's so many guys that come in like every year that does that, and there's
10
gonna
to
be even
7
more.
shoot range, pass, dribble, shoot potentially, potential shot blocker, or in Buzelis' case,
Yeah,
hopefully.
I forgot. I totally forgot about Mattis. Of course, yeah, Mattis. I mean, right now in Ignite, he hasn't gotten much chance to do that, but I wouldn't be surprised when he gets to the league and just starts like shot creating and stuff eventually.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Reminds me
yeah,
of
for
kind of
sure.
Franz Wagner, where
Hmm.
at Michigan we saw him a lot more off ball, and then once he got to the league and saw how much space he had to kind of let his bag grow, he's flourished into an all-star caliber player. I think he's. I don't know where you're at on Franz, but he could be an all-star this year.
I mean, yeah, I think when France comes in, this season, like he had a pretty decent FIBA showing, and Magic they need a guy to kind of step up next to Palo. So I think France can do that, and like it's like you said before. I mean, and not just big men too. Like we see a lot of 6'10", 6'11" wings coming in now. So I mean,
Yeah,
the game's changing for sure, and it's the smaller guards. Like it's hard to stick in the league. Sharif Cooper, Kenneth Chandler, both super talented players, but they're small, so it's kind of hard to stick in the league. So the game's changing for sure.
yeah, I agree.
Because just like if those guys that couldn't draft in like 2005, 2006, they'd probably be top 5 picks staying in the league for sure. But
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. It's definitely changing, and I think podcasts like this are very advantageous in our favor to talk about these guys and just pick each other's brains as people who love basketball in general. Trying to figure out who's like where's the diamond in the rough here. Two guys I think are pretty firm players, at least within their own games. You kind of know what they're going to get from night to night. Jai Mitchell is a guy who I didn't watch a ton of at UC Santa Barbara last year, but when you prompted me to dig a little bit more into the film, I knew he was an analytics darling and had a hyper efficient year. But generally, with those lower conference players, it takes a lot for me to get interested. But when I went and dug into his film, he's a legit NBA prospect at 6'5", like has a ton of potential. And I'm going to give the floor to you to kind of talk about his game and some of the things you're seeing. The things that popped to me off rip, just the assist to turnover ratio, the high level playmaking and feel for the game. And then, obviously, not the most consistent shooter from three last year, but has a good mid-range shot, can get to his spots effectively, good at finishing around the rim. What are kind of your ideas about a Jai Mitchell as an NBA draft prospect preseason?
I mean, yeah, I thought last season he was one of the more underrated guys that no one was really talking about, and this
Clearly,
season he's
I,
gonna
I
go.
wasn't, I wasn't, I wasn't, I was unknown and unknown for sure.
He's definitely getting more buzz this year. I saw in the ESPN mock draft he was on there, so that's good to see. But I mean, with Mitchell, it's like he's got almost everything you want from a point guard, but the 3-point shooting. I mean, super good in the pick and roll. Like when he runs the pick and roll, it's either a bucket or a pass. Like he really knows how to run and he's got really great vision. He knows how to find his teammates, and he's got the mid range shot. Super good finisher. He shot like 66% of the rim at 6'4", which is really impressive. And on defense, he can defend the point of attack. He can guard man for sure, and he can switch a little bit. Like he's got the size to guard the 1 and 2,
Mhm.
and he's definitely super. Like he's gonna be a guy who I think comes in day one and becomes a really good, valuable backup in the league. But I think this question is, can he get the 3-point shot up? He's got the mid range, he's got the free throw, he's got the touch, he's got all the positive indicators. He just doesn't take that much threes. So hopefully this season he takes a big jump in that. But I think, I mean, right now for me, I got him as a top 25 prospect. I think he's a guy that can come in and like right now and become a good backup. But if he has as a jumper, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that teams like I think right now he's probably a second round guy for most teams. But if he adds a jumper a little bit, I think he can be a first round pick.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the spot where Jalen Williams was preseason with Santa Clara before he kind of emerged later in the year. Just not obviously the level of shooting, but in the playmaking and point guard version of a player like that who does everything that you want to in a day one ready NBA player. Um, I love what you said about being able to defend both guard positions. I think that's going to be a day one value, definitely a floor raiser for him as a prospect. Um, yeah, I'm just excited to see it. I don't know what your perspective on it, but what is kind of your thoughts about him sticking at UC Santa Barbara when I feel like the interest was out there maybe for him to transfer up?
I mean, I'm a big fan of that. I mean, in this
Gaucho.
day and age in the transfer portal, a lot of those mid-major guards get kind of screwed when more teams like get value more experienced players. Like we saw that one Ohio State Rice State guy, Tanner Holden, I think his name. He averaged 19 points a game at Rice State. Went to Ohio State, only played like 3 minutes a game, and now he's back there. So I mean, I respect. I think staying in your mid-major team and being the guy is better than going to maybe like a high major and being like a secondary third option. And for Jay, I think that was the best move for him. And this season, I wouldn't be surprised if he's averaging like 18, 19 a game, 6 assists, and wins the player of the year in his conference again.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's one of those guys where he made the right decision. Um, Malavi Leons out of Bradley. Jai Mitchell sticking to the theme of the episode being from Belgium and Leons being from the Netherlands. The Missouri Valley Conference Defensive Player of the Year last year, and somebody that I think could do it again this year. Just really a do it all. Kind of 3-4, kind of play the small ball 5. I think he's an underrated playmaker. In moments, kind of reminds me a little bit of Tomani Kamara, from Dayton last year. Can shoot it pretty effectively, 35% last year. But I think it's really the defensive stuff for me that sells me on him as being a guy who's probably going to hear his name called in the second round at least next year.
Yeah, I mean, Malvi is one of my biggest sleepers for sure. I mean, at 6'10", you don't really see a lot of guys with his off-ball defense and
Mhm.
his on-ball versatility. Like, he won Defensive Player of the Year in his conference for a reason. He can guard a 3 to 5 really
Mhm.
impressively. He's got the length to defend and rim protect. And on offense, like he shot 35% from the three, and he's a legit shooter too. He shot 36%, I want to say, last year on around 4 attempts a game. And like just looking how many guys in the NBA can you say that are 6'10", that can that are high level defenders and can hit this from three, and that's what Malvi can do. I mean, he didn't get most draft buzz last year because of course he's an older prospect that plays for a mid major. So, but Bradley, I think, are a team that can maybe make the March Madness this year,
Mm.
and I wouldn't be surprised. And also with Portsmouth this year, Portsmouth, a lot of guys jumped up. Hunter Tyson, he got
Omari
drafted
Moore.
from there. Kamara, yeah, exactly. Craig Porter, went from complete unknown to a two-way, and he's doing his thing with the Cavs right now. So think if Lance can come into Portsmouth tournament and maybe the Jilly Combine, and I think teams are going to be a big fan of him. The only issue I have is his age. He's around 24 right now, so that could be a turnoff. But of course, Chris Yorta got picked 13 at
Jalen
24.
Slauson ended
Jalen
up
Swanson
being.
got picked. Yeah, exactly. So I think he's a guy that should definitely be a second rounder. I think he's a first rounder for me personally because his versatility and his length. And of course, we like Zachary Richardson, for example. He's a team player that I know ESPN had him at 3 too. And I think Malvi is a more polished version of what Richardson can do. Obviously, he's not 18, 19, but I think when you're looking at the second round, like, I don't know why he wouldn't be in the conversation there. So he's
Yeah, I've
definitely someone
I've
who,
Rich Kaiser tier one on mine. I kind of have
yeah,
my tier ones kind of guys that are top five possible. And then like tier two is lottery possible, and tier three is solid first round. Kind of more guys that are solidified college players like Grant Nelson's in that range, Naquan Tomlin. And now, after you have me dig on to Jai Mitchell, he's solidly towards the top of that range. Haven't really fleshed out rankings yet, but Leon's another guy that is creeping into that tier, away from a guy that I thought was going to be a for sure second rounder to now, watching back some of the film. And I think, like you said, if he gets on a good stage like a Portsmouth, if Bradley makes the tournament, which I think they're more than capable, they brought in a really good freshman guard, Demarion Burke, who I think is going to catch a lot of people by surprise. They have a solid, front court mate with Darius Hannah. I would like to have seen them keep Zach Montgomery instead of him going to Rhode Island, but um, I think that they'll have definitely a good chance in the Valley to do some things. Um, yeah, I guess I'll throw the floor to you. Do you have anything that you've been working on? I know you don't do many pods, so I appreciate you taking the time to come on ours and chop it up. But you got any like written work, anything that you want to plug at all?
I mean, uh, you can follow my Twitter, my Instagram. I'm posting a lot of guys who I feel like are underrated. Like most of
Definitely
my
one of the
page
best
is
Twitter
just
follows I know.
yeah, most of my page on Instagram and Twitter are just the guys who I feel like are really underrated. And when I see guys that like get the hype, I'm glad for them. And there's a lot of guys that like every year. I mean, with the media, how it is, like they don't really hype up those underrated players,
Mhm.
so they don't really until they get to the league and the show we can do. But I mean, yeah, I mean,
I'm in the same boat with you. I don't like
I
beating
appreciate you
the
for
horse.
inviting me to the pod.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
No,
I had a good
I'm
time
not
here.
with it with the top 15 consensus tweeting about those guys 3 times a week. I'm right there with you. With talking about the guys that are underrated, even if they're not for sure draft prospects, they still deserve recognition for their game. And I think you do a great job of highlighting a lot of players that deserve that that type of shine, I guess, on platforms. And I think you've done a great job, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was saying, I appreciate for you inviting for the pod. I had a good time, and you guys been doing your thing for sure. I caught some episodes, a lot of good work, and I'm just
Appreciate it.
glad you guys had me. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for taking your time. And we are off the clock.